Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here to see all of you today. I try to do my best to take as short time as possible from your presence here. And the topic today is green production. And I'm very happy that Norway is one of the rare places where I met where I've been with Thomas did it in Lillehammer in a film school. We met a lady who is taking good care about this topic. And in many terms related to the nature, Norway is basically superior to many other countries, to the majority of countries around the world. And I would say that taking great care could be a good sample for many other countries and many other people. And the planet is like, in this particular case, there is a good saying that if you do not care about the politics, politics will take care of you. If we're not taking care about the planet will take care of us. And we will be wiped away. I mean, basically, which very often I have a feeling that we deserve that big time. But my name is Alexey Berkovich. I'm cinematographer. I'm the member of RGC and the Imago Technical Committee. And I'm very proud to see FNF members here today, and Paul René Rostad, who is for many years leading Imago through different times and then doing a fantastic job uniting cinematographers and addressing the attention to the right points. And Imago is a great place, I would say. Today it's uniting more than 6,000 cinematographers all around the world. It's 50 countries membering, and particularly in the Imago Technical Committee, we are really taking good care about the topics which is becoming or already part of our daily life, professional life. I would say that in the visual storytelling, lights is still the most important component. And because as a statement, I inherited from my father, who was a cinematographer. And when I was a kid, I was asking him what it's all about. And he said, it's very simple. Our job is about creating two-dimensional images of three-dimensional world. But at the same time, we would like to see three-dimensionality of anything. And with the images, we would like to transmit emotions and many other features. And we would like to control the attention of the audience. And basically, within this triangle of interests, we have to understand that basically as a simple question like how to define the quality of the light, character. Is it a soft light or spotlight? And the only way is to do it by character of the shadow. Light itself is absolutely invisible. We see reflections from the objects, from surfaces. And it could be the landscape. And then if we're shooting the landscape from the helicopter at a midday, it will be like a geographic map. It will be totally flat. You didn't see how high is the mountains, how deep is the hollows. And by having the deviation of lights and shadows, we can see the character of the landscape. And I would say that the same is about the face. And basically, within this system of coordinates, we practicing the art of visual storytelling. And if we're talking about the creative lighting, I would say that it's all about control. We have to control intensity. We have to control color properties. And in today's world, where we have different light sources like LEDs, which do not have a linear spectrum, representation of the skin tones of the actor, of the talent, is very much depends on the careful testing and checking the lights in advance, knowing the problems and trying to find a way how to obey those, how to deal with it. We have to control the spread. That, for instance, if for whatever reason cinematographer would like to have the light, particular light on the face of the actor, not necessarily having it on the background and in the corners of the interior or studio, and then addressing the particular elements of the set, object, or even face, not flooding everything. At the same time, position of the light, like if you're talking about sunlight coming through the window, it's giving a lot of additional information, like what time is it now, what maybe even the season, because of the angle and then color. And the character, which again, bringing us back to shadow. And by controlling all previous slide topics, we can control attention, mood, look, style, and visual message. And the visual message is an interesting topic. And if we will look at if we will see somebody lit like this, what kind of message you feel? Any guesses? Yeah, aggression, fear. When I was in a film school, we was asking endless questions. Why? Why everybody have the same opinion? If I'm showing other light, like from the side, the opinion will be very different. But this particular one is very defined. And with a couple of friends of mine, we was doing this job for several years, like besides everything else, and asking endless questions. And all of a sudden, we found an answer from the scientist who was a psychologist. And he said, I thought that you should know that by heart from the beginning of your practice. The visual perception and emotional perception of the world of human beings are not changed from the time when human beings were animals. And in these days, the most dangerous part of 24-hour cycle was the night, because people cannot see at night, but predators does. And predators was mainly hunting at night, and the only protection in those days for people was the fire. And then at night, people were sitting around the fire, seeing the faces of other people sitting opposite to them, frightened to death and lit from underneath, because the fire cannot be above your head, it's always on the ground. And from then on, it's recorded in our DNA. So, because basically the light is waves of energy, and any other waves, like sound, they're creating very distinct emotional impact on people. And that's why in the music we have a major and minor, and with the same way, basically, and using the same channel of data acceptance and transmission, we can transmit the emotions to people. And very important thing that to perform this kind of control, very often we have to manipulate with the light, and in the majority of cases, we're killing some of it. Like intensity, we're dimming, and basically that means that we're reducing, we're consuming more power, but getting less light out of the thing. Depends on the light source. And if it's constant voltage, LED for instance, then if you're dimming it to the middle or to the end, you're consuming the same amount of power all the time. And it's just burned and turned into the heat by resistors sitting on the LED stripe. With the constant voltage, it's not happening on the LED strip, but it's still, you're losing power. Color, of course, you're adding filters, or you're changing the balance between LEDs. Spread, again, diffusion materials and a lot of things, positioning the character. Here you can easily see what's happening. And every time you first spending money to buy the lighting tool, you're spending money to power it up, and then you're killing big part of this power just for being able to control and to define the result which you would like to have. And at the same time, I heard many different opinions, and I heard a lot of very important and solid statements regarding the power and green approach and saving the planet. And I would say that I have major problems with this, because when I heard for the first time statement that we have to use LEDs because this way we're saving the planet, it sounds for me so strange, because the maximum power efficiency of LEDs nowadays, suitable for photography, cinematography, and television, is 60 lumen per 1 watt of energy, when fluorescent lamps giving us 80 lumen per watt, and HMIs up to 120. So HMIs is giving twice more of efficiency and power savings compared to LEDs. But manufacturers made a lot of money and convinced everybody that, yes, this way we're saving the planet. Unfortunately, if those tricks of manufacturers will help to save the planet, I will be more than happy. But still, we have to take care about the planet. And in this case, when we're thinking only about the light emitting surface, or the point where electric power will be converted to visible light energy, then we just may find ourselves in kind of a deadlock. Because nobody can use the light within the light head, inside the light head. We're using it outside of the light head, or fixture, or light emitting board or stripe, and we're usually using it on a certain distance. And light is a very visible light is a very tiny part of the complete spectrum of waves of energy. And biggest part of the light emitting surfaces is basically still generation of the heat. And when we're thinking about the impact of, I would probably go back just to say a few things. When we're asking ourselves what's happening with light on a distance, there is a basic explanation, like reference to inverse square law. It's one of the physics laws, but basically it's completely wrong, because very often we're talking about focusing lights, for instance, or the big panels. But inverse square law is written for the theoretical spot light source, which does not have any size. It's basically a spot from where waves of energy is traveling in the space 360 degrees in every axis around this point. Those waves of energy never intersecting with each other, and it just explains that on a certain distance, if we're choosing a certain area and we're getting a certain volume of energy, on a double distance from this starting point, we'll have only quarter of energy on the same space, because of the geometry of wave spread from the theoretical spotlight source. But when we're talking about practical lights, still light intensity is dropping down on a distance very fast. Like if you're taking your 18 kilowatt, 18,000 watt HMI light head, focusing it to the spot, pointing it parallel to the ground, and walking 2 kilometers down the beam of light, turning with your back and checking, the light is gone. 18,000 watt of electric power converted to visible light, completely disappearing. Where to? Is anybody has any guesses? Because the first law of physics says nothing coming from nowhere and nothing disappeared completely. 18,000 watt of electric power is a pretty big amount of energy. And on 2,000 meter distance is completely disappearing. Just as a hint, 2 watt laser pointer on 2 kilometer distance will be almost the same intensity and same size. Does it ring a bell? No, because if it's spread, it should go somewhere, but it's completely disappearing.
Is it killed? It's depending on the frequency of the lights.
Absolutely, it's one of the elements. The process called destructive interference. Because waves of energy traveling in space, once more, we're not talking about theoretical spotlight source where the waves of energy is not intersecting ever with each other. When two waves of energy intersecting each other, like here, when energy vector of one wave is going up and the second one going down, they're killing each other. And killing means collision will turn the visible light not back to electric energy, but to heat. And if you put the hand in the beam of light and if you feel that it's warm, that exactly tells you how much light is dying on your hand. When the light is killing itself, it's releasing the heat instead of visible light. Basically, laser, you're absolutely right. Besides the fact that it should be parallel, the waves, it should be same wavelengths. Because laser it doesn't exist in white. It can be red, green, or blue. And like BMW, they made the laser traffic lights in the car, and then 3 lasers is coming through the prism, mixing, and then from then on, getting out as white light. They're not behaving the same way as the monocolor red, I would say, on a distance. But what does it mean? There is a light which holds intensity and preserving the energy on a very big distance. And then, from one hand, it's the way we're living. We're not paying enough attention to the very important topics quite often, because unless somebody of us was born at night, the first thing we can see when we was born is the parallel beam light, because the direct sunlight is a perfect parallel beam. When actually the sun is million times brighter than what we can see, but 99.9% of this intensity dying, killing itself in a close proximity to the star. If you want to visualize it for yourself, if I will try to run as fast as I can and trying to lose as less energy as possible to this exit from the room, and there will be nobody, no chairs and no people, I can do it pretty fast and not really losing much of the energy. But if the whole room is crowded with other people and chairs, I can reach the same point, but it will take much longer, and I will lose a lot of energy, because every time when I'm colliding with somebody, my kinetic energy acting against kinetic or potential energy of another body, and that's how energy is wasted. And the technology which was successfully using that was invented in the end of 19th, beginning of 20th century. And as any other technology, serious invention, calling for serious investment, it was made for military purposes. And the biggest invention of the end of 19th and beginning of 20th century was linked with aviation, the first aircrafts. First aircraft was not able to fly higher than 2,000-meter height, and with ammunition, with bombs or machine guns, even lower. And when the aircraft is flying on 1,000, 1,200 meters, 2-3 guys with normal guns can easily shut it down, just shooting. That's why aircraft start flying at night. And at night, if you're trying to shut down the aircraft, 0 chances if you didn't see it. Because if you're oriented by sound, it depends on the direction of the wind, speed of the wind, and then you're shooting here, but actually aircraft is there. 3 seconds later, you have a feeling that it's here. It's no chances. And the only solution was not Maxwell, but keeping the ways. And of course, when people understand that at night they have to lit aircraft, but there was no light sources which was still available on such a distance. And then the anti-aviation searchlight was built. It's the best artificial light source ever built by human beings. It was arc light, completely flicker-free, because it was DC powered. It was 18 kilowatt of power, DC, with 2 electrodes, plus and minus. It was bicolor because he was able to change the electrodes and getting 3200s or 5600s Kelvin. It was 1 meter optical glass parabolic reflector with a front surface silver coating. If somebody wants to build something like that today, this reflector alone will cost 200,000–300,000 euro. And this technology was the only anti-aviation solution till the beginning of the Second World War. And when German aviation started attacking the British shore, British engineers invented radio control of airspace. And from then on, the lights were still in the army till the end of the war. But after the war, cinematographers all over the world inherited it for free, including 100 kilowatt power generators, very big and powerful converters, which converting AC to DC, 18 kilowatt. And that was amazing light. If you have a shittiest decoration set and you put the beam of this light through the window, you're at home. It's all becoming live because plasma, same type of plasma as the sun, flicker-free, amazing full spectrum, and that was linking or gluing together all elements for the perfect imaging. But then those lights was phased out because, not because those was not good enough, but because gaffers and electricians of those days, the best of them was able to manipulate and take care of the service of the machine inside, which was supplying the electrodes with a different speed. It was extremely heavy, very big. It was quite noisy. And all of this was still not reducing the demand for this light, but still the front surface coated reflector is a very fragile item. And if somebody just wiped the dust once with a dry cloth from this reflector, you're already immediately getting pretty bad scratches. And in cinematography, set is one of the most violent environment in the world, where people are able to damage anything. And of course, in Hollywood, still a couple of dozens of those lights are in active use. In Europe, you mainly can see it in the museums. I didn't saw much of those functional. But a couple of companies in the United States is still producing those carbon electrodes. So, but if somebody would like to test, you can arrange that somehow. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible. And here we have the talk about green approach, finally. As I said before, here is the light source, and by choosing the light head, which is actually the vocabulary of professional vocabulary, is also quite far away from perfection. Like when you're asking, what is this light? Any. And you're getting an answer that's like 300 watts. What does it tell you, actually? Like if I will say that the distance from Oslo to Lillehammer is 35 kilograms. The distance is not measured in kilograms. The light is not measured in watts. The light is measured in lumen or lux, and it depends how big is the power efficiency of the light. But still, we somehow can adjust our mind that, but actually, we're thinking that if we need light somewhere here, we understand what distance and what level of light we have to get there, and that's how we can evaluate is this light is good enough or strong enough for us or not. And if you're looking at this graphic, we're not using light in here. We're using it here or there. And if we want this intensity level in here, which is, let's say, double, triple, 4 times of the distance, you have to take 10 times more powerful light source to get it there as here. And that's where a power is wasted. And the solution we're offering is very simple. You have to keep the stability of the light on the distance by arranging several conditions, like keeping the beams parallel and keeping light polarized. And then this condition of light, once more, we cannot reach this level of laser, monocolor laser, because we have to deal with a white light. And besides the destructive interference of same wavelengths, we have different wavelengths, and then within the same axis, the longer waves, it still has certain interference with the shorter wavelengths and stuff like this. But that means that we're talking about power savings, which is multiple times bigger. For instance, we have 1200 HMI light head, which gives you more light than 18 kilowatt HMI in a spot position on 7-meter distance and furthermore, which is more than 10 times power efficiency higher. So in this case, this is HMI, this is photometrics on 2-meter distance. Without this parallel beam adapter, we have 8,700 lux. With adapter, we have 36,000 lux, which is basically, in this particular case, it's 413% more. Means this is the indication, rough indication of efficiency of this approach. And then this is the parallel beam, and the parallel beam you cannot focus any further or defocus. It's either parallel or not parallel. When it's still parallel, it keeps intensity on a distance. If it's not parallel, and in case, for instance, if you're shooting a high speed, you need more light, you can focus it to this focus point. And then you're getting 5 times more light than even first indication. But then beyond that point, the intensity drops down like crazy. Because at this point, you will have more light. So if it's a high-speed tabletop, you can use this. You can focus parallel beam light and getting much higher light intensity on a certain point because you don't have any further distance. It's landing on the surface and dying there. So it's good enough. And then this is 1200 HMI. Basically, this is kind of a closest attempt to build the light looking like the anti-aviation searchlight. And very important, very often people saying that, wait a second, but this is PAR light. And PAR is not a reference to parallel. Abbreviation PAR is parabolic aluminum reflector. The PAR light, the parallel beam light cannot be open face. The light source has to be covered. And it's a very interesting effect also, which is just proving. If we're removing this cover of the lamp, we're getting less light on the distance. Actually, we're opening, we're killing this light. It's black. It's just dying there. But then, if this is the open face, this will be the light source, which is light source number 1. But then all light reflected from the reflector will be the second light source. And this 2 arrays, 2 streams of light is traveling together and killing each other. When you're killing some light from the beginning, you're still reducing those losses big time. And another point that by using the mirror-type reflectors, which we have at the booth, and many of you already managed to visit us at the booth, now, we do not have any soft boxes for this light because it's very important. By using mirror-type reflector, you keep the light polarized and parallel. And if you're increasing the spread, you're still getting much higher intensity than reflection, for instance, from white paper or any kind of plastic, vinyl, or fabric. And even the silver reflector still giving you less of the light than the reflector. And that gives you an absolute control. You can choose the spread index of reflector, deciding where you would like to have the light and where you do not want it. And that means that normally on the set, we're spending only 10% of the time for setting up the lights. and 90% of the time to cleaning up unwanted effects, unwanted reflections, unwanted shadows, and stuff like this. We do not have this problem because we are not creating unwanted light. Every lumen of light looks used for the purpose, never wasted, and that's increasing extra efficiency. And if you take into consideration the fact that many of this you have to finish then in a post-production if you didn't manage, but the computer's consuming a lot, monitors consuming a lot, and it's still related to light. If you're calculating all the energy expenditure during the whole process till the final grading, like basically coming to presentation of the project when it's completely finished, then you can imagine it's enormous numbers. As I mentioned before, different spread indexes of reflectors, creating, you see, very defined beam, softer edges and a little bit spreaded area, like 50-50 accented and spreaded area ratio. This is about 30 degrees, this is about 60, and practically no accented beam. And combination, limiting the area, you can put the black foil or black wrap on the reflector, making a line, making a circle, making oval. And all of this allows you to keep the power efficiency and use of the light already generated and get like taken out from the light head, being used for the purpose and for the reason. You can multiple redirect the light, and you can also create so-called virtual light source. And then basically all of that, if we summarize it, besides everything, it's bringing condition and character of artificial light source light as close as possible to the natural light. And natural light is the sunlight. And when we have to get closer, because actually all our professional life we're in a way cheating. We're cheating the distances, we're cheating the feeling of the space, we're cheating the light. We don't have a sunlight, we're using 6K or 8K or 12K light head somewhere. And we have to make it, as soon as we have to cheat, we have to make it like clinically clean, when nobody sees that we're cheating. And this is possible by understanding the nature, and this is how you can, like for instance, you have a certain distance, and you're getting the light of a sun coming through the window, and if the distance now is 6 meters, and it's bounced from the reflector, it's like if we keep the light in here, and then it's a pretty big distance. So whatever is possible for the talent to move inside the interior, you will never see the intensity changes. But if you put here the 6, 9, 12, 18K, every step towards the window or away from the window will change exposure on the face, big time. And there is practically only one theoretical solution. Besides that, you cannot do anything with it. You cannot close the iris because you're dropping down intensity of the background, which doesn't change. And then by using the parallel beam or getting closer to the parallel beam, we're creating so-called virtual light source, which is just continuation if now we have a lot of smoke in the area, and it shows you very defined edges of the beam. If you continue those edges, you're getting so-called virtual light source. And the distance, when it's a parallel beam, is counted from this virtual light source, and then having the actual distance of 6 meters, 43 centimeters, you're then switching to something like 20 meters. And then the impact of artificial light sources not there. And that's how artificial light look like natural one. And we have some other things which also showing here on the stand. And I believe that all good solutions is coming from the big pain in the ass you're experiencing every single day And when you're getting annoyed with this, finally, you're trying to find a solution, and you're finding. So I made a special lighting tool for the chroma key or flat backgrounds, because normally that's the way it looks. We have it at the booth here. And normally, any kind of chroma key is quite useful, very affordable technology. It's one of the cheapest way. But this is a standard way how to make it, half of the height. That's a distance from the edge, and light head under 45 degrees. And then, as you can see, you have more light here and much less light here because of the distances. And it's very difficult to arrange. And every time when you're trying to arrange that, you can kill some of the light. Like you cannot make more of the light here, but you can kill some of the light on top to get the top closer to the intensity of the bottom. Again, you're creating pretty big dead zone where the light which is actually illuminating the background. First, if the actor, talent, will be standing here, there will be shadow in the background, which then doesn't work. And there will be light on the object, not making it usable. Because, again, control. You have to separate the layers of the image. Foreground has to be lit separately from the background, and there is no interference between those two. And this light, using reflectors, same way as we looked before, but linear, gives you possibility to one light head to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 light sources. And then spreading it on the background gives you the possibility to get very even light at a minimum energy expenditure. And today, after this presentation, I will travel to the Storyline rental, where we're going to set it up for pretty high background. There was a test made before. We made some changes because there was a very important thing that when we're looking at this, so this light has to be fixed approximately 1/10 of the height of the background above it, and 1/7 of the background away from the background. And then here is a rough calculations. And then if you look at the image, you can imagine when we have the light in here, so the angle of falling light and angle of reflected light, all the reflection from the background goes to the foreground, and I have a lot of spill. If the light is sitting on a very stiff angle, all reflections going to the floor. And there is practically no shadow. If the actor is standing there, this is how the set of lights is. Usually one set is 4 or 5 light heads maximum. You can get 3, 2, or 1. And this is the image, which you cannot judge because of the fantastic support of the house lights. And then it's keyed out, and you can see closer that every hair is clearly keyed out. And I did that as a test very fast. It was done in the standard effects section of the Adobe Premiere, which is one of the most primitive keyers. And I made it for purpose because if this keyer can manage it. When you're using the software power to clean up the imperfections created on the set, then usually what first happens, you're damaging the foreground, and then from no matter how big is your efforts to adjust the lighting on the set and bringing background and foreground together, it will always look like a chroma key. So basically, this is also another background, which we are not showing here. It's a process and development. It's a background which is activated by UV. We found a green and blue fabric with a special component. When you put UV, it starts shining. And for me, that was absolutely incredible because, you see, it's a glass. I tried to key out the smoke. It's perfectly keying out. And here, I was sitting, it's a chroma key. It was green. I have a green leaves, green paper, some elements in all different types of green, all stays. So when you're addressing and initiating the color, by very narrow bandwidth, it's so much easier to key it out. And the early tests we made according to all measurements and calculations, we made a proper exposure for the background and the foreground. And then we was checking like with half channel, steps up and down, above the key and under the key. And like at a very low bottom, when on the monitor, the background was totally black. I said, we should stop because it makes no sense. We recorded it just because we already did it. We took it to the computer, and it's perfectly keying out. You didn't see, and when we tried this color with a color picker, it shows us 255 of green. So we did not develop it further because we found at this moment that only Sony cameras has a very even color spectral response, and all other cameras, including Red, ARRI, and all others, they have pretty much pushed up blue because their native color balance is daylight, and that's how manufacturers can pretend that their cameras is native sensitivity 800, equivalent of 800 ASA, when everybody knew that it's 320 maximum, otherwise it can physically not be done with this technology, but other technology doesn't exist so far. And thank you very much. If there is any questions, please feel free to ask. And as soon as not much time and left, all of those slides you can see at the booth. You can try it. And I have to say that, just finishing this discussion, our profession is living through a very difficult time. You have to shoot twice cheaper, 5 times faster, and 10 times better. Because the desire of investors to put the money in the filmmaking were a lot of risks. It takes the production cycle and distribution cycle is pretty long. There are so many other entertainment purposes where investors can get much bigger amount of money practically at no risk. And it's not only for profession of cinematographer. If you want to preserve this as a creative industry, I would say, we have to able to react on those challenges, to produce cheaper, faster, better, and saving as much power as we can, because the price of the power, I think, furthermore, will be higher, higher, and higher. I didn't see any realistic chances that it will go down. Even in Norway, where you have oil and gas and practically all sources, let's say, of energy. And I really appreciate your attention. I'm so happy that nobody fall asleep, because it's a pretty hard floor, and falling down will be. And yeah, thank you so much. And once more, if you want to see it, we have it at the booth. Thank you.